This is another supplement to the main video on how do we define winning in a rivalrously based culture, and how do we go about winning. And I had mentioned this covenant between God the Father and God the Son in eternity. And what I want to talk about in this little supplement is how should we think about that, and what evidence is there that such an agreement exists, because it's not stated propositionally, just like the Trinity is not stated propositionally either, right? So one of the important things that goes into thinking about this covenant between the Father and the Son is that we need to keep in mind, and really throughout our reading of Scripture, the distinction or the difference, and it's an essential difference between eternity and time. They're not commensurate. They're different. And God did not create time and then dump a creation into it with the Word bringing about creation, the first words of creation. Time comes into existence, but God is in eternity. Now, how we might think about that and relate it to our present moment, this is important too. It is an example that I read in another book where we ourselves live in the present in light of the future. And we know we do that, right? We're going to school now so that we can get an education and get a job later. The example given in the book I referenced was a picnic. If I'm going to go on a picnic after the day's work is over, I'm going to, in the present, pull together all the things that I'll need for when I leave my job, right? And so I'm living in the present in light of the future, and then once I have the picnic, well, that's now in the past. So God's covenant between the Father and the Son is anticipation of the times of the restoration of all things. Now, what evidence might there be that this covenant exists? Well, there are a number of ways to do it, but I want to just use the one in Hebrews where it says that Christ is the mediator, he's the surety of this covenant, or a better covenant. What are we referring to there? Well, one, there's a surety agreement. And if you go to the bank and you're going to be a surety for a loan, you'll have to sign some papers, right? Different from the one who's getting the loan. So there's another example from our own experience of a surety agreement being distinct from the fundamental agreement that it's the surety for. And what he's referring there to is the promise of the seed of a woman in Genesis 3:15, that God then passes on to Abraham the promise of a seed that will bless the world, the nations, and all peoples. And then God gives a unique covenant to demonstrate what's coming in the covenant mediated by Moses on Mount Sinai. And so what the author of Hebrews is saying is that Christ is the new mediator, replacing Moses, or the covenant mediated with Moses, but he's the surety of the covenant, or the promise made to Adam and Eve of the seed that was passed on to Abraham. So that's what that eternal covenant is, and that's how we should think about the word Christ is the surety for a better covenant.